Hey, you're listening to the wrong podcast. Topics today include kidneys, art, and beauty.
Wrong! What's wrong with you? What's wrong with y'all?
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you people? Wrong!
You do have to tolerate it. It's my show.
Hi, I'm Tim. I'm here to talk about politics, culture, religion, sports, and anything else you're not allowed to talk about in polite company. Issue number 1! Bad friend. Okay, there's the story. I believe it's in the New Yorker magazine, and you just need to hear it to believe it. This woman, I believe her name is Dawn, she is a benevolent human being. She volunteers to give a kidney away to a stranger. Now, before I move forward, I need to tell you something about the lovely Wendy. This is her dream. She would love to give a kidney to a stranger someday. Anyways, that's who I'm married to. Yes, I have problems keeping up, as you can imagine. So Dawn, she does this thing that Wendy can only dream about doing. Dawn gives a kidney to a stranger. And this is a big deal. If you have this kind of surgery, you would notify your friends and family, hey, doctors are ripping a kidney out of me. And you might want to know how I'm recovering. So she creates this Facebook group. I don't know if it's a group or it's a group chat. Whatever, it doesn't matter the particulars of how she created this group. But she invites this woman named Sonia into the group. Dawn has never met Sonia, but she feels professionally connected to her enough and considers her a good friend. Someone equal to a family member. She invites Sonia into this group, and Sonia does not feel the same way about Dawn that Dawn feels about Sonia. So Dawn's, making updates, posting, hey, they ripped it out of me. And she notices that Sonia is reading all of these messages. But Sonia never comments. She never hits like. She never hits care. She never hits love. And this bothers Dawn. And Dawn says to Sonia, hey, I noticed you're getting my updates, but you never comment. You never say anything about it. Well, Sonia has some different opinions about Dawn. And she is messaging other friends on a different message group or something. She's having conversations about Dawn, saying, what is up with Dawn? Could you be any more self-congratulatory than this woman? Oh my goodness, we're all so lucky to know you. I'm so sorry that I'm not commenting to tell you how much I admire you for this thing you've done. So Sonia's going back and forth with some friends about, how little she thinks of Dawn. And eventually, Dawn writes this letter to her kidney recipient. And I haven't read the letter, but the takeaway I got from it was that Dawn wasn't writing to this person saying, oh, I'm so glad that your life has improved, that you'll be able to live now. It was kind of more self-congratulatory stuff. A lot of the use of the word me, a lot of the use of the word I. So Dawn writes this letter. I don't think it can actually be delivered to the person. I think there's HIPAA violations that keep you from actually connecting or contacting the recipient of your kidney. But sometimes people find each other. But anyways, she writes this letter and posts it to the group so that everybody else can read it. And they can all say, oh, that's just beautiful. Thank you for doing this. Well, Sonia has a different idea. Sonia's a writer. I forgot to mention this. These women are both writers. They're professional writers. Sonia decides to write a short story about a kidney donor and the recipient of said kidney and how they interact with each other. And part of her short story, she takes Dawn's letter word for word and puts it into her story. And then she submits this story to some publication who publishes the story. And this short story, people are saying, hey, this is really pretty good. It's kind of about, it's got some white savior themes to it because the recipient is, I think, Asian and the donor is white. And it's getting some recognition for its quality. Well, eventually Dawn notices Sonya's story, and she says, oh, hey, I'm a kidney donor. How come you didn't talk to me about this? And I think Dawn hasn't actually read it. She just knows that Sonya has written this story about a kidney donor. So she's like, hey, I'm a kidney donor. You could have come to me for some research. And Sonya says, oh, yes, it's not really so much about the donor as the recipient. And well, eventually Dawn does read this short story. I'm just going to pause for the cringe factor that's about to happen. Dawn reads Sonya's story and recognizes the letter she's written. And this is not cool, right? Like, this is not cool. So she reaches out, before she reads it, I think Sonya reaches out to the publisher and saying, hey, there might be some copyright issues with this. We need to change a few things. So she does, but she doesn't change enough. Dawn recognizes her letter in Sonya's piece. So Dawn reaches out to the publisher and says, hey, you're in copyright violation. Like, this shouldn't have been published. And she sues Sonya and the publisher. And Sonya, in return, sues Dawn for Sonya sues Dawn for, I guess it's professional, like, I've never even heard of somebody doing this, but she sued her for derailing her career. It was like professional sabotage or something like that. So there's multiple lawsuits back and forth against each other. And all of this is in court documents now. And part of what's in the court documents is how Sonya's saying, Dawn and I aren't even friends. And Dawn's saying, yes, we are. Like, you don't have to actually meet somebody to be their friend and to think highly of them and to think they're an important person in your life. And, just gross. And here's to you to decide who is the worst person in this story. Issue number 2! Artsy Fartsy. In my episode number 50 that I had a conversation with Jeremy about movies. And one of the things he said that we didn't really focus on, but we had a brief disagreement, and I want to talk about it more. And this is totally unfair to Jeremy because I'm talking about it more without him present. So, sorry, Jeremy. It's my show. So he said that everything is art. All movies are art. And I said, some movies are art. And to Jeremy's credit, I will agree. The broad definition is always going to win. It's much easier to say that everything is art than to say not everything is art. Any form of human expression could be considered art. I concede. And what you need to know is that that hasn't always been the case. That's not what we've always thought of art. But basically every 20th century modern artist was making the same argument over and over again in different ways. And they've won the conversation. We all agree with them now. They were all making the conversation that everything can be art. You don't have to paint specific things. You don't have to paint flowers in vases. You don't have to paint portraits of people in this particular way or this particular style for it to be art. You can paint completely non-representational things, and that is all art. That is, that's why you will see pieces that you don't get. They're giant canvases that are completely white. And you're like, how is this art? And the artist is saying it's art because I say it is art. And that conversation is won. We basically all agree now. If you say it's art, it is. And there's two artists in particular I want to juxtapose. In fact, juxtapose is a word I learned while majoring in art. And I think I was a freshman, and one of the seniors, it was like a group project, and he or she said, always use the word juxtapose. Our professor loves that word. So we tried to work it in. So I'm juxtaposing two very different artists, Piet Mondrian and Jackson Pollock. I mentioned Jackson Pollock in my last episode. He was a famous drip painter, and Mondrian was completely different. Everything he did was straight and square in a grid, and he used 5 colors only: red, blue, yellow, black, and white. And the art these two guys were producing was incredibly different. Incredibly different. Chaos versus structure. But these two guys were having the same conversation, and they liked each other's work. And that's because they were both making the point that anything can be art. And they liked what the other guy was doing to prove that point. So that means not just how you paint, but anything you do can be considered art. That means cooking a meal could be art. And there are people making that case convincingly. There's somebody who sat in front of a piano and did not play anything. That's art. Driving to work. That could be art. Smoking a pipe. That could be art. If I say it's art, it's art. Now, that leaves open the conversation about, is this good art or is this bad art? And not everything is good, and not everything is bad. In fact, some things are bad, I should say. I'm sure that there are artists out there who disagree with me that we should even be saying that some things are good and some things are bad. These are the ideas of postmodernism, in fact, which is falling out of favor quite quickly, thanks to Donald Trump and the 9/11 hijackers. But that's a different conversation entirely. But some people will say there is no such thing as good or bad. And I would say that's not true. There is good art. Sure, let's call everything art, but let's recognize some things are good art and some things are bad art. Now, part of the problem with this conversation and the thing that causes confusion is that we're using two definitions of the word art. The definition I've just been talking about is expression. Everything is human expression. And anything you do that expresses who you are or what you believe or what you can do, that is now the definition of art. But in our heads, there's this other definition. And let me back up and give you 3 different categories that are not fixed and they aren't clear exactly who's in each one. It's kind of a gradation from one to the other. The first is a hobbyist. This is somebody who likes doing something. The second is a craftsman. This is somebody who's moved forward from a hobby to a level of excellence. They've learned some techniques. And they've learned these techniques well enough that other people are willing to pay for it. Or people are asking them, hey, could you do this for me? Maybe they're getting money, maybe they're not. But they're a craftsman. So hobbyist, somebody who's, tinkering with wood in their garage. Craftsman, think of a carpenter. Think of, somebody who's selling artwork or selling paintings. I'm a graphic designer. I'm a craftsman. I have artistic skills that other people pay me for. They say, we need this. Can you create it for me? And then finally, the third would be an artist. Somebody who is redefining the skills that are used. They're pushing those skills of craftsmen to a new level of excellence. Maybe they're inventing a new way of doing something, a new way of painting, a new way of carving, a new way of acting. Or they are expressing a human emotion at a level that is unique. So it's not just their great skill, it's also their ability to evoke emotion. So it could be one or the other. Either they have great skill at doing something, or they're provoking just emotion out of people that maybe they didn't intend to have, but when they saw this work of art or they experienced this work of art, they felt something deep within them. And the greatest artists are able to do both. They're able to use great skill and provoke deep emotion. So you can see already that there's these two definitions. One is art is any human expression. And this other definition of art is, no, it's a level of excellence. It's doing something better and unique or more uniquely than anyone could imagine. So a craftsman, like I was saying, I'm a graphic designer. I'm somebody who uses artistic skills that's useful to someone else. Someone else can take what I've done and they've got a purpose for it. And this is part of why I was saying that movies are not necessarily art. We watch movies, people make movies for us so that we can have some entertainment, so that we can laugh or we can cry or we can feel something. We view it as a source of entertainment. We know that we need to relax and have leisure in our lives, and movies do this for us. And yes, I will pay you to watch your movie so that I can have something to do with my time, so I can have something to talk about with other people. Now, sometimes movies can be elevated to a higher level of excellence, where when you watch it, you say, wow, that was amazing. I had this experience watching A River Runs Through It. It's a movie with Brad Pitt. And I watched it, the credits start to roll, and I said, that was art. It was made at such a high level, and it provoked so many emotions in me that I elevated it from a product of entertainment to this high form of art that needs to be respected. And I would say the same of Schindler's List. Steven Spielberg is an excellent craftsman. He's an excellent storyteller. He would tell you that there was something different about his work on Schindler's List than in, I don't know, Batteries Not Included or The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin. Or did he make Rin Tin Tin? I think he did. Yes, he made an animated movie. Ready Player One is not the same thing in his life as Schindler's List. And those two movies shouldn't be the same thing in your life. One was made with a much higher degree of excellence and attention to detail than the other. Now, all of this has to go back to the conversation with Jeremy about whether or not you can take the C word out of a movie that when you don't want to hear it. If you have the ability to edit it out, can you or should you? Is it okay to fast forward through scenes in a movie? Is it okay to hit mute during a movie? Is it okay to hit stop and not watch a movie all the way through? Is it okay to hit pause or rewind and rewatch something? Whenever you do these kind of things to a movie, you are changing how the movie was intended to be presented. The director and the actors and the producers of the movie, when they made it, they didn't say, hey, this will be a good place for you to hit pause. That's fine if you do that. No, they want you to watch the whole thing. They have, timing and sequence involved, pacing. These are all things they've considered, and they don't want you to hit pause. So when is it okay to hit pause? Are there movies where you shouldn't hit pause? And I'm saying, yes, there are some movies it's fine. If you want to, hit mute or hit pause or fast forward or edit out the curse words, by all means do it because it's a product. But there's other movies like Schindler's List. You should not edit out the nudity in Schindler's List. When Schindler's List was shown on network TV, they did not edit out the nudity. Whether it was sexual or non-sexual, they left it all in. And I think that's the right case because it's a different form of product. It reached a higher level of artistic excellence and needed to be respected in a different way. Here's some examples. If you have an average suburban home in Toledo, Ohio, no offense, Toledo, but I'm guessing you've got a bunch of average suburban homes. It's totally fine to add an addition to those homes. If you want to build a second story or add a sunroom or build an extra bedroom or maybe even knock down a wall or add a wall somewhere here or there in the house, nobody is offended if you do that. But if you go to a Frank Lloyd Wright home and you add a second story or you build on something to it, that's offensive. No, you shouldn't do that. A Frank Lloyd Wright house, even if it's got drainage issues, is a work of art. He's done something different and unique, and we need to respect it and not add random, closets onto the outside of it so that we can have more storage space. If you go to a French restaurant in Paris, you should not probably be saying, hey, could you hold the mayo? No, if the chef decides it needs mayo, then you've gone to a restaurant where you trust the chef, and it is a much bigger offense to say, hold the mayo or add ketchup to that meal than if you did it at, a Chili's. There's somebody who's made that decision in both places, but the degree of excellence at the French restaurant is such that you should just trust him and recognize that if you ask for ketchup, you're doing something wrong. So I think anything can be art. And I think we should be expecting new forms of art to be created. It sounded ridiculous to you, probably, for me to say that driving to work could be a form of art. But maybe something like that will be elevated to a form of art. And one place I think that you should expect to see an emerging field of art is video games. Absolutely. My brother is really into video games, and he makes a great point that they don't just entertain. They're getting to a level where they provoke emotion. They might make you cry. And there's people who, I've heard of people who are actively doing this. They're actively promoting video games as a form of art. And there will be other places, other things that you can't even imagine. That, yes, smoking a pipe is something that somebody could do as an art form. At the same time, I don't think that everything is art. Not everything we do is art. Not everything we're attempting to do is art. Just because somebody else has called it art doesn't mean that it is. Or just because let me put it this way. Just because let's say, I don't smoke a pipe, but just because I smoke a pipe and somebody else is smoking a pipe and calling it art, that doesn't mean when I do it, it's art. And just because somebody else has made a movie that's art doesn't mean that everyone making movies is making art. Final thing to say about this. It's okay to like bad art. There's lots of bad art out there. I've probably made some of it. As a professional artist, I'm sure I've made some of it. And it's always my client's fault, by the way. So, it's okay if you like bad art. If you listen to bad music, that's okay. Fine. You can listen to Britney Spears for the rest of your life. And you just need to recognize that this is not good music. It's not good art. I like something bad. There is such a thing as bad taste. And maybe you have it. It's okay if you want to indulge that bad taste. Just recognize it's bad. Don't claim that it's good. Remember, I want to know what's wrong with you.
What's wrong with you?
If you'd like to submit a question, topic, or tell me how I was wrong, you can email me at listen@thewrongpodcast.com or submit a comment at my website, thewrongpodcast.com. And help me spread the wrong message. If you like what you hear, share it with your friends. Leave a review on iTunes. That would really actually help people. Subscribe on Spotify. Leave a comment on Spotify. These things would really actually help me find new listeners. Issue number 3. Beautiful. Now, I've already gotten myself in all kinds of cultural hot water by even talking about art. And even by even saying that some things are not art and saying some things are not good art. Well, I'm going to get a little deeper into it right now by talking about beauty. First off, you need to know that art and beauty are not synonymous. art is different than beauty. Beauty is a tool that's used by artists to create their art. And not all works of art should be beautiful. If you're talking about the horrors of World War I trench warfare, you should not be displaying that beautifully. Now, you might use artistic excellence, which I guess is a form of beauty, but it shouldn't evoke a sense of beauty in people when they view it. They shouldn't go, oh yeah, I just want to stare at this all the time. If you're making an effective piece of art that prompts the correct feelings out of people in seeing something disturbing, it should disturb them. They should want to look away. They shouldn't be curious to sit there and ponder it for a long time. It should produce something icky in them. And beauty would be the wrong thing to do in that time. Beauty is something different than art. Now, there's a very common phrase, and I will start it out and you will finish it in your head because everybody knows it and everybody believes it now, even though it's wrong.
Wrong!
Beauty is in the eye of the... It's in the eye of the beholder.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
And let me just tell you, that phrase is hogwash. It's not true. Don't believe it. It's absolutely not true. I need to be emphatic. Absolutely not true. You should, in fact, be disturbed when you hear anybody say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Don't believe them. Recognize that you just heard a lie. And you don't need to necessarily confront them in the moment, but you should at least say to yourself, no, that's a lie. That's not true. Now, taste is absolutely in the eye of the beholder. Preference is absolutely in the eye of the beholder. But taste and preference are different than beauty. And as I said before, sometimes people have bad taste. Sometimes people choose the wrong thing. They choose something that's not beautiful when they should have chosen beauty instead. Yes, lots of people have different tastes, lots of people have different preferences, but those are different than beauty. I want you to think about beauty entirely different than you've been taught. I want you to think of beauty the same way you think of truth. Now, truth can be elusive and it can be debatable, and we might only have a small portion of it when we're talking. We might overinflate different aspects of things, or our own biases might prevent us from seeing it. But it really does exist. Truth is out there. Whether or not we can recognize it, whether or not we can describe it, how a car accident actually happened is real. There is truth in the fact that a car accident happened, and the things that caused the accident to happen are real. There is a truth there. Whether or not we can find that truth, that's a different conversation. But there is truth in the world. And beauty is the same way. Beauty, I would say, is a form of truth. Beauty is objective. It can be known and it can be discovered. When you go to art school, whether or not they give you this theory of beauty or not, they are actually teaching more than just technique. Technique is, in fact, as I was saying, there can be excellence in technique, and that's a form of beauty. And they push you towards that. They want you to use excellent technique because they recognize it's beautiful. And there are times when technique should not be used beautifully. Absolutely. It depends on what you're trying to say or do. Some of the other places that beauty can be found, aside from technique, it can be found in scale. It can be found in contrast. It can be found in perspective, in detail, repetition, and complexity. These are all forms of beauty. And these are things that are taught in art school in objective ways. Whether or not the professors or the students even recognize that they're dealing with tangible, objective reality and beauty as an objective thing, they are real and they are taught that way It's kind of like people are doing it without even realizing they're saying one thing with their mouths and then doing another thing entirely by teaching you these skills and teaching you these concepts. And if you're at an art school that isn't teaching these things, you're wasting your money. Like, you could just stay home and do it yourself and save the tuition money. Like, that's the irony of telling art students that beauty isn't real. You're charging them thousands of dollars to learn things from you that you're saying don't exist. Like, you're a liar or you're a con man if you're doing that. Unfortunately, most people coming out of art school might come away with that worldview in their heads, on the tip of their tongues, but when they actually execute their art, they're not living it out. They're doing something better than what they know and they believe. Now, as I was saying, there are preferences, and absolutely, there are cultural preferences when it comes to beauty. And people can value one aspect of beauty over another. They might emphasize it to a degree where they completely abandon another form of beauty. And within our own cultures, we sometimes mix beauty with other things that aren't beautiful. We might think they are, but because we've mixed them in, we think the whole thing is beautiful when really it's just one part of it. And when you think of a pop song, think of a pop song from like not recently. It's easier to conceive it in like an older pop song, like from 20 or 30 years ago. Like, for example, it may not be a great example, but there is a song by this guy named Rockwell, and it's called Somebody's Always Watching Me. And it still gets play, particularly at Halloween time. But the thing that makes the song great is not the rap that this guy is doing. It's the hook that Michael Jackson provides in the chorus. Michael Jackson is amazing, and he totally makes the song. The only reason we want to hear this song is for that hook, this part of the song. We could do away with the rest. That doesn't mean the song is good. It doesn't mean the song is beautiful. It means this one part of the song is beautiful. And we don't need to say that the whole song is great. We can say, this part, that's good. And sometimes within our own perceptions or within our own culture, we have a hard time doing that. We have a hard time saying, yes, this is the good part. We just claim all of it is good. When, in fact, it's not. It's not all beautiful. Now, sometimes also in beauty, there is a larger conversation happening that you may not be aware of. And so that makes it difficult to see the beauty. There might be a layer of complexity that you're just not aware of, or there might be some, like I said, there's some conversation that two people are having that you don't know what they're saying. And so it's hard for you to see the beauty in it because you haven't been introduced to it yet. So there might be some education necessary for you to be aware of why we say this is beautiful. I think a great example of this is the musical Hamilton. If you took somebody from 1975 and used time travel, and this would be a weird thing to do with time travel, but if you got a time machine, why not? You take that guy from 1975 and you set him down in a musical theater in 2019 and you have him watch Hamilton. He is going to be like, what the heck is going on? Like, I don't understand this at all. They're talking way too fast. What is all this? And that's because that person hasn't been exposed to the history of hip-hop music and rap music over the last 30 years to get to that point. 35 years to get to that point.
Wrong!
That would be like 45 years. Gosh, I'm getting old. So you might need to introduce somebody to the forms that are being used so that they can recognize the excellence being displayed. But the excellence is still there. Now, the other thing is that you need to know that sometimes people have a distorted sense of beauty. As I mentioned, some people have bad taste, and sometimes they embrace that bad taste. They don't recognize that McDonald's hamburgers aren't good. They don't recognize that really Burger King is not where you should be eating. They're like, yes, this is excellence. I really like this. If you think Burger King is excellence, you have a distorted sense of beauty. And you need to be educated out of that. You actually need to abandon that. You need to give it up. Not just because the food is bad for you, but because your sense of what food should taste like, it's robbing you of other experiences, of things that are even greater than that. And that means in some cultures, in fact, in all cultures, in one way or another, they all have some sense, they've all got this distorted sense of beauty in one way or another. And it's hard to see. That's part of what's being in a culture. That's part of having cultural biases is all about, is that you don't see how your reality is distorted by the culture you're in. A great example of this is the Soviet Union. And there is an excellent miniseries on HBO called Chernobyl. I highly recommend you watch it. Please go watch it. Find it somehow. If you need to rent it or get it from your local library or pay for HBO Max for a month, it's totally worth the money to see it. Chernobyl. It's about the nuclear reaction meltdown in the Ukraine while the Soviet Union existed. And one of the top scientists who prevented the disaster from being even worse, in his dying days, he was making recordings about his experience. And he was hiding his feelings about what happened from the government because he knew that they would kill him for what he was saying about them. One of the things he had to say was,
"To be a scientist is to be naive. We are so focused on our search for truth, we fail to consider how few actually want us to find it. But it is always there, whether we see it or not, whether we choose to or not. The truth doesn't care about our needs or wants. It doesn't care about our governments, our ideologies, our religions. It will lie in wait for all time. And this, at last, is the gift of Chernobyl. Where I once would fear the cost of truth, now I only ask, what is the cost of lies? It's not that we'll mistake them for the truth. The real danger is that if we hear enough lies, then we no longer recognize the truth at all. What can we do then? What else is left but to abandon even the hope of truth and content ourselves instead with stories?
and again, I want you to think of beauty in the same way that you think of truth. Let me restate that, but substituting the word truth for beauty. What is the cost of ugliness? It's not that we'll mistake it for beauty. The real danger, if we see enough ugliness, is that we no longer recognize beauty at all. Now, the Soviet Union was completely corrupted by lies. It had become more advantageous for the citizens and for the government officials to lie than to tell the truth. That was how you could survive. That's how you could make it to the next day, was to promote a lie and to continue with a lie. If you heard a lie and it was the right person saying the lie, then you needed to go along with it, no matter what. Eventually, that had consequences. And my argument is that people can forsake beauty in the exact same way. They can continue to say that things that are not beautiful are in fact beautiful. And when they do that, they forsake the truth. And eventually, there are consequences for it. Now, there's an artist named Makoto Fujimura, and he is a Christian artist, or he's an artist who is a Christian, your choice on which term you prefer. I'm sure he has strong opinions about how he would, what he would say he is. And that's a different conversation for a different day. But he was not a Christian at the time, and he was becoming introduced to Christianity. And at the same time, he was making artwork. And as he was making this artwork, he's a non-representational artist. I'll have a link to his art so you can see it for yourself. But as he was making these paintings, he was discovering beauty. he saw that he wasn't just making things and saying that they were beauty, but he was finding beauty as he made this artwork. He was discovering it. It was there for his finding. And he realized he wasn't the author of this beauty, that it was there, and he was only uncovering it for himself and for other people. He realized that there was an author of beauty. There was somebody having a conversation with him about what is beautiful, and he was finding out that it was real. Now, when you are faced with a magnificent sunset, I want you to realize that you're having an experience with something real. You found it. You found beauty, and it's provoking something in you, and it's okay to feel provoked. And in fact, you should stop and appreciate it. This is why we say stop and smell the roses, right? Like, roses are beautiful. They do something for you. When you see them, when you smell them, you recognize something outside of yourself that you didn't have. So stop. When you see that beautiful sunset, when you go to the Grand Canyon and you see it for the first time, you should allow your breath to be taken away in a moment and say, whoa, I just found something. And when you find it, don't just stop and experience it, but try to describe what it was. What are you seeing that's giving you that reaction? In whatever vocabulary you can find, describe what you see. I see red. The contrast is sharp. It's moving from this hue, from pink to purple. Whatever you can do. It doesn't necessarily even have to be a sunset. Any form of beauty that you see, try to describe it for yourself. Maybe later, maybe in the moment, maybe in your head, however you can, try to put words to it. Because when you can put words to it, that will help you find more of it later. Now, what I'm not saying is that I have an absolute handle on beauty, and that I can define beauty perfectly for you, and that I can spot beauty perfectly every time I see it. This requires some intellectual humility. Just like with truth, you need to recognize that you have a weakness in finding and seeing and describing beauty. But that weakness does not mean that beauty does not exist outside of human perception and experience. But I could be wrong. If you think I am, let me know. And let me know why. I had fun and I hope you did too. Bye-bye.